Hi everyone, welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Taarika Foundation focused on youth mental health. Today we will be discussing something that can be terrifying, especially during these times: college. College is a new experience for everyone, and it's one of the hardest transitions that people make. In ideal circumstances, people would have problems like being homesick, not fitting in, hating their roommates, and hating the overpriced cafeteria food. However, the sad reality is that people are now attending college in the midst of a global pandemic, which, as you may have figured, has very different problems. Today, I will be interviewing someone in this exact situation. Hi, Sarah. Before we begin this interview, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Sonia, so much for the intro. To everybody listening in, hi, my name is Sarah, and I was born and raised in the Bay Area. I recently graduated from Presentation High School and will be studying at the University of Washington starting this fall, hopefully in an area related to business or communications or something along those lines. A lot of my current interests surround marketing, digital art, basic human rights, mental health, and racial representation in the media. That's just a little introduction to me. And before we really start off, Sonia, thank you so much for having me on here. And I'm super excited for what we're about to embark on.
Well, of course, it's actually our pleasure. We love having different guests to interview with different backgrounds. So thank you so much for volunteering.
Yeah.
So, with the current pandemic situation, there are schools that are offering hybrid learning, online learning, and all in person learning. So, my question to you is, what options were you offered and what did you choose?
So my school basically announced that campus would be open for students in the fall, but with the catch being that approximately less than 10%, and I think as the pandemic has been going on, it decreases even more, of our classes would be held in person. And from what I remember, they made this, or they decided to do this based off of class size, or if the class is an in-person class that requires some aspect that's hands-on, like art or science labs. So I think that with this strategy, their main aim was to give students the choice of having hybrid or completely online learning. And a part of me thinks that a small group of these students will be able to be completely in person, but honestly, I think that's really unlikely in a super rare case. But I guess, yeah, just to answer your question, all those options you mentioned are technically available for everybody, but at the end of the day, I chose to be on the side where I learned completely remote.
So, why did you make this choice?
It was honestly a pretty hard choice for me to determine what I wanted to do. But the easy thing that I immediately settled on was wanting to be online, especially because at the University of Washington, class sizes for freshmen are super big typically. Like the school's huge. So everyone that's coming in is going to have a class that's 100 plus kids most likely. And the ones I did register were exactly what I said. I have over 150 kids in each of my classes. So either way, it would have been online. And it worked out for me in that sense. But the part that took me the longest to figure out is whether I wanted to be online in my house or online in a dorm. And I think in some ways it's easy for people to make a decision, but this was really tough for me. I really wanted to be on campus and have a normal first year experience, but I also knew that physical health was super important. And just debating between all of the pros and cons between staying at home and going to college, I kind of had to just give myself a kick and realize that there are certain things in my life I have to prioritize beyond having that traditional great first year experience, because right now is not a normal time and I just need to adapt with what's going on. So I ultimately decided to just be online at home with that. And I didn't want to lose another crucial experience of my life. Just as senior year, we lost a lot of that, but I just knew I just needed to be smarter about my priorities. And as a little bonus, helpful for my parents, we're able to save some money with that too. So yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure that everyone's choices were different during this time, and you have friends and peers who chose different options than you did for different reasons. So some people are choosing to defer admissions as well. So, what choices did you see your peers make?
Yeah, so I have a couple of friends who are working with different choices and who've already solidified a lot of decisions. I do know a majority of us are going to be staying at home and learning from home, but I do have a few friends who are headed off on campus, who are attending in-person classes with masks. One of my best friends is actually leaving in a few days just to do that. So that's just a little example of somebody I know. There's also another group of people I know that are going to be attending class online, but just in their dorms, which was exactly what I was about to do. And I know a lot of those choices stemmed from the same mindset that I had about having a normal first year experience as possible, because I did hear a lot of talk with my friends who did decide to go over that that was their primary goal and they didn't want to be a homebody when they're growing up. So.
Mm-hmm. And this is obviously not an easy decision to make because college is something that, especially here, high school students just prepare for their entire 4 years, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, how would you advise someone to make this decision based on your personal experience?
So the way that I thought about it was I knew that obviously I did have priorities I set forth straight early on, but I set those priorities because of, like I mentioned earlier, that expectation of wanting to have that great first year experience. But I decided to actually think about what I cared about, and that ultimately helped me make my decision. So I do know that everyone has those different priorities, mindsets, and abilities. So I would just advise people to basically weigh their options based off of what they best see fit for their situation. A pros and cons list, something as simple as that, either doing it mentally, which is what I did a lot, or just straight up writing it down on a whiteboard will totally help you out. And even talking to a friend who's going through a similar situation or even something completely different, just to hear perspectives and open your mind up a little bit. And I know that's not something I mentioned earlier, but talking to a friend, definitely probably actually my number one piece of advice that helped me pretty significantly. So yeah, I definitely recommend that.
I'm really glad that you were able to do all these things and, make that decision based on what you thought was best for you.
Yeah.
So obviously people have to make a lot of adjustments during this time to, go to school or wear masks or whatever it may be. So what have been some adjustments that you have had to make during this time?
I have had a few. I definitely had to rethink about how I wanted to come back to school and continue learning. So one thing I've done is adjust my environment. I'm one of those people where if you go in a room and you do everything there, like you sleep there, you have fun, you go to work, you do school, and if it's all in the same area, I know that can get really stressful. So one thing nice that I've decided to do is just make my room a little bit different every so often. So I rearrange my room just so that I can feel like my workspace is constantly changing, and it just helps reset my mind and all of that kind of thing. And something else that's been pretty difficult is having my whole family at home. Everyone is working and doing school from home, and sometimes it gets kind of hard. Sometimes it gets really annoying and tiring and loud. And I guess just what I've realized is that we have to work with what we have. So something that my family and I are planning to do together is have some sort of meeting to eventually figure out how we all can accommodate one another. And I think that's really important. Sometimes in this kind of situation, you just need to be more communicative with other people around you. So that's something we're trying to figure out in the near future. As a little bonus note, I'm on my computer a lot now. I have to do my work and my school and all of that all digitally. So I try to make some time to go outside to a park near my house, get some sun, or just have a walk. And it's just nice to not be on your phone when you don't need to nowadays. So I know I sound kind of old saying that, but it's really helpful.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm doing all of like my Zoom classes for high school on the computer now, which
Yeah.
is like so many hours a day, and it's just staring at the computer all day. And I think it's definitely nice to just have that little breather and that break. And what you said about your family and planning to have like a meeting to figure out how you can accommodate each other, I think that's so helpful because really the only way that you're not going to end up at each other's throats at the end of all of this is just to keep communicating and having and maintaining that good relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also know how hard it can be to see the good within this experience because it's not exactly ideal and it's not what you would imagine for yourself. However, though several students aren't able to get the amazing college experience that they dreamed of, there's still a lot that we have to be grateful for, which we often forget. So lastly, to end this interview off on a more positive note, what is something that this pandemic has brought for you that is good?
Yeah, some positivity. Awesome. Yeah, there's a lot. Honestly, I totally agree with you in saying that this is not the optimal situation for anybody. And especially in terms of missing a really good chunk of my senior year and even college, it's a little stressful. But I think that I've been able to take a lot away from the situation. But the most thing I'm grateful for is being able to solidify my group. So, as you know, in high school, there's tons of people that you hang out with and you enjoy being around, but there's sometimes, I think, a blurry line where you don't know how important people are in your life and vice versa. Like, you're not sure where you guys stand completely together. But being socially distanced from everyone and forced to be at home, although I have lost some good connections I had, it's really helped me open my eyes to see the people that I know are going to be there for me throughout college, throughout the rest of my life, and all of that. So even with all the bad that's happened, I've been able to solidify a really good group, and I'm really happy about that.
I'm really, really glad that you were able to do that and, take this as an opportunity to do that. And I think that's, so awesome that you're really finding out who your real friends are and what your group really is. So thank you so much, Sarah,
Yeah,
for
thank you.
joining me in this interview. I'm sure that all of our listeners found this super helpful and super insightful into like kind of the mind of a college
Yeah.
student or someone who's going right now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Taarika Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every Friday, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and thank you so much for listening.